Have you ever been as angry as Susan seems to be right now? Do you remember how quickly it happened? Right in the middle of a game, just when you were having a lot of fun. And how you wished, as Paul does, that you could take your anger out on the person who made you angry.
Oh, no!
And have you too felt like throwing things or breaking them, as Carol does because she's angry at her sister Susan and at Priscilla? Everyone gets angry now and then and feels like destroying or hitting something, as Eddie is doing. Feeling angry is a natural thing, just as natural as feeling glad or sorry. But angry feelings are disagreeable. They make you act and look as well as feel unhappy. But let's go back and see what made these boys and girls angry. Then maybe we can better understand what happens to us when we get angry. It all started in the park when Susan and her sister Carol and their friend Priscilla were having a good time jumping rope.
You missed! I didn't! I said I didn't! I saw you! It's not your turn anymore! It's Priscilla's turn now! You take her in! I will not! You stopped turning and made me miss on purpose. My turn. It isn't Priscilla's.
The argument with Carol made Susan very angry. We all have arguments once in a while, and it's natural to get angry. And so, when Carol refused to give in, Susan quit the game and went home. Susan nestled down on the soft couch and tried to forget her anger. But somehow her feelings of anger didn't go away, and Susan could not read or think of anything she wanted to do. The trouble was that Sue's anger was still bottled up inside of her. She felt as though she were bursting with unhappiness. How could she get rid of her anger? Let's listen to what she has to say to Carol.
Susan, may I borrow your tennis racket? I want to play with Priscilla.
No, you can't use anything of mine. Not ever. I'm so mad at you.
What's the matter with you?
She's angry because she couldn't have her way when we were playing jump rope. She didn't play fair.
Oh, now, wait a minute. Let's talk it over. Susan, tell me all about it.
Gradually, Susan is getting rid of her anger. Angry feelings should be gotten rid of one way or another, but always without hurting someone else. Let's leave Susan and her family now and see what made Paul angry and what happened to him.
Oh, I bet this plane will fly for 5 minutes. Better fly longer than Pete. Hey, careful there, Eddie. Don't break it. That's Pete. Boy, wait till Pete gets here. We can take him out and fly him all around.
Hi.
Oh, hi, Pete. Look at the planes. Aren't they wonderful? Come on, let's go.
I'm not going to fly planes today. I'm going to play ball.
But you said we'd fly our planes.
I said I would, but I changed my mind. Besides that, Jack said I could play first base. We can fly planes tomorrow.
You're a heck of a guy. First you promise, then you break your promise.
Oh, so what?
That's a dirty trick.
The broken promise and disappointment have made Paul furiously angry. Things like this happen to all of us, and we're pretty likely to get angry. For a moment, Paul stopped and thought about going to the gym, where he hears Mr. Jackson working with a punching bag. But then he decided he didn't feel like going to the gym or like watching Mr. Jackson. So he went home. Like Susan, Paul wished he could forget his anger. But the more he thought about Pete, the angrier he got. You can see he didn't feel much like playing baseball. Nothing seemed like fun. The anger was still in him. He felt thoroughly upset. Perhaps we can understand better how Paul felt if we understand what happens to all of us when we get angry. It's as if suddenly many parts of our body work harder and faster. We feel great excitement. Hearts beat faster, and the blood seems to rush quicker through the body. Sometimes a lot of blood rushes to the head. Our face gets flushed. Sometimes blood rushes to the stomach. Anger makes us feel sick all over. Sometimes we clench our fists or bite our nails. Often we feel as though we were like kettles filled with steam. The angrier we get, the stronger the pressure inside of us. Like the kettles, we must find some way to let the pressure out. When Susan got angry at Carol in the park, she got all stirred up inside. And when Paul got angry at his friend Pete, he too felt as though he were boiling over with anger. But when Susan went home, she didn't let her anger out. And Paul made the same mistake. You can see that Susan and Paul would have felt better if they had found a good way to let the steam off sooner. Because it is important to let out our angry feelings, let's think of some different ways of getting rid of them. One way would have been for Susan to tell Carol right away that she was furious at her. Then she might have gone on turning the rope and waiting for her turn to jump. Perhaps Susan would have jumped so hard that she could have jumped higher and better than she ever had, and the girls would have admired her for doing so well. Or Susan could have looked for her mother as soon as she came home and told her all about her trouble. Talking difficulties over with friends, parents, homeroom teachers, or the coach are good ways to get rid of anger. If Susan had tried any of these ways, she would have let her anger out and pleasant feelings would gradually have returned. Susan then would have soon forgotten her troubles and gone on playing. Now, let's see what Paul might have done to get rid of his anger. When he passed by the gym, he might have entered. And then...
Hi, Mr. Jackson.
Hi, Paul. Boy, it sure feels good to get the old muscles loosened up again. But I thought you were going to be flying your model plane this afternoon.
We were, but Pete ditched me.
Well, how'd that happen?
We were just about to fly our planes when Pete decided to play baseball.
Baseball? Here, Paul, you want to hit the bag?
Had Paul started talking to Mr. Jackson as soon as Pete left him, or even decided to punch the bag, his disappointment and anger would have dissolved, and he would have begun to feel better right then. Perhaps as Paul pounded the bag, he might have thought it was Pete. Every swing was a swing at Pete. Do you think that would have helped Paul get rid of his anger? Anyhow, with his feelings taken out on the punching bag, Paul may have found that he wasn't angry anymore. That evening, Pete telephoned Paul to apologize for changing plans without talking first with Paul. He knew that he'd been wrong. When Paul told him how angry he'd been, Pete asked if he could come right over and work with Paul on their airplanes. So they had a good time together after all. There are other ways, too, of getting rid of anger. For instance, see what Eddie is doing? He is getting rid of his anger by drawing a picture of his aunt, who a few hours before had scolded him. His mother isn't home yet, so he can't talk to her, but he can make a funny picture of his aunt, and that makes him feel better. He's having so much fun drawing the picture that he forgets all about his anger. Perhaps you, like Carol, can imagine dreaming up a story about animals or people that would help you get the anger out of your system. All these are good ways to get rid of anger. They free us so that we can start having fun again. You see, the important thing is to let out our anger in some active way, by running, or jumping, or hitting the punching bag. But we must be sure that we don't hurt or make others angry. Because if we remember what happens inside of us when we get angry, we'll be more careful about making others angry. And perhaps, too, when we get angry, we'll think of the best ways to work our anger out of our system. Can you remember some of the good ways that helped Susan and Paul get rid of their anger? What would you have done if you'd been Paul or Susan?